Hello, everyone. I'm Shreyas, and I welcome you to another episode of the MLDA AI Podcast. I'm back after a one episode hiatus. I'm sure you all must have missed me. With me, I have a brand new host today, Abhiram, who is the co-deputy president of our club. And today we have two very exciting guests. Everyone today has access to powerful AI. You can generate code, build apps, automate workflows, even prototype entire single-man companies in just the span of a weekend. But if you zoom out, there's a much harder question underneath all of this. How do you actually turn these capabilities into real systems that work reliably at scale in the real world? Because that's where things start to break. And today we have two experts who specialize in that domain. With me, I have Fabrianne and Jun Kai from AWS. And with that, Abraham, would you like to start by introducing your guests?
Sure. The guests who are joining us today work very closely in companies that are building real world scalable AI solutions across the region. And today we are focusing on modern applications on how these scalable engineering features help in cloud native architectures and how AI is reshaping the very world that we live in. So, hi Fabrian, can you introduce yourself and welcome back to NTU?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Fabrianne. I'm a serverless specialist solutions architect working at AWS. So I help customers across ASEAN in their application modernization journeys. Specifically, one of the areas of focus would be GenAI accelerated modernization. So how can we use GenAI tools to help accelerate this entire modernization journey?
Sounds very interesting. I think we are going to have a very good conversation on GenAI and scalability. And welcome, Jun Kai. Welcome to NTU. And yes, a brief introduction.
Hi everyone. My name is Jun Kai. I spent about 4 years right now in helping companies to build out AI systems and solutions at the enterprise skills. And we start as well as we know that they're at the forefront of innovation, many times outperforming what existing big tech companies can do. And prior to doing AI, I was involved in large enterprise system design. So my previous employer was with Accenture for 1.5 years now, and currently I'm employed in AWS as an AI specialist solutions architect.
That's nice. Is it your first time here in NTU or
I've been here
Multiple times already.
multiple times.
Yeah.
You've been with our club before as well.
Yes, I think yes.
How does it feel coming down?
It's nice. It's still where it's at the side of Singapore, and one side of Singapore is a
Mhm.
hassle to travel. It's quite a distance to travel here, but always happy to be back to meet your team.
Yep. So okay, let's get started. Okay, many of our listeners here are students and come from a variety of backgrounds from like electrical and electronics engineering, where a club is based, and a lot of students from computer science, and even some from mechanical engineering and School of Mathematics and Physics. And all of them have this big question, like, how do we move from learning about AI to actually working with AI or building AI? So, could you briefly walk us through your journey on what initially got you interested in this and how it evolved over time? So, Fabian, can you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I also recently graduated from NTU, so I resonate with whatever you're saying. Last time when I was back in school back at NTU, right, I joined a lot of hackathons and I encourage students join hackathons, just have fun, and especially now with all the AI tools available, experiment with all these AI tools, push the limits of what the different AI tools can use, see what you can build with these AI tools, and then you apply it to more real life use cases in the form of hackathons, and then from there you can get that wide range of exposure, rapid prototyping. I think that's a good way to get started. And of course, do personal projects and ultimately also internships. Internships is the way you can get your hands dirty on the real systems, see how the more of the how the real industry works, whether it's in terms of AI use cases or the usage of AI toolings, and then from there you get the exposure and be better prepped for the real world.
That's wonderful, dear. So, out of the top of your head, can you remember or can you share with us like your most memorable hackathon experience that you had during your school?
Oh, most memorable hackathon experience. Hold on. So I used to join a lot of hackathons.
Mhm.
So let me think. Think one of the um one of the hackathon experiences that came to mind is there was this so it was a law hackathon, right? We are building this application for lawyers, right? Where we are trying to understand the need and meet this gap where there's a gap between lawyer matching and the people who need lawyers, right? There's that fundamental gap. How do you know who is suitable? So you just think of it like a dating app, but for lawyers, right? That was a real need. And the cool thing about this hackathon, what makes it different for a lot of the other hackathons I joined is most of my other hackathons I joined with, let's say, fellow computer science schoolmates. But for that one, it was a mixed team. So we had 2 lawyers in our team and then 2 or 3 of us from the computing side of things. And that combination made our team very strong because we brought in domain expertise, the law expertise. So the lawyers were the one the people from law school who are now lawyers, they were the one who bring in those law experience, did all the research of what truly is the pain points faced by those people, in this case, like more for pro bono kind of use cases, right? And then from the company side of things, we brought in, like, let's say the system design, the UI UX design, ultimately how are we going to architect this entire thing. So putting all these experience together, we built our solution. And I think the important thing that we learn is also it's not just enough to have, let's say, your computing experience or AI experience. You also need that domain depth in order to really tackle a problem at its roots and to really target the pain points.
That's nice. I think we also really love working with like interdisciplinary teams, especially for some of our modules, like to find like different people and different expertise. Okay, like Jun Kai, we know that you are from Australia. You did your undergraduate from Australia.
Australian University.
Australian University.
Based in Singapore.
So can you briefly talk about your experience in Australia and how Australian University in Singapore and how it built and how your career progressed?
Okay. So the school was actually based in Singapore actually. So I didn't took anything related to AI during my school. In my degree, I actually specialized in cyber security. Even back in school, actually when I chose a course, I wanted something that specializes in data science at least, but it wasn't available. So what I did was I took out FYP project that's related to machine learning. So the project was around predicting traffic conditions, right? That project didn't really land me a data science job though. I did apply many jobs that's related to data science, but it didn't. So in the end, I went to Accenture, right, as a system engineer. I kind of felt that I was put into the role because it was a very back end infra building kind of thing. Not that interesting to many folks. So since they found someone, they might as well shove me there for 1.5 years. But it was an amazing role because aside from like the software engineering work that we typically apply for from a computer science background, I did the backbone of infrastructure building. Then from there, I actually pivoted to a cloud company because I guess like every people who are in tech wants to join the FANG companies or whatnot. That's where I applied to AWS. And to be honest, I didn't know exactly what I was applying for. It's a solutions architect role, but what's the job scope and role is a bit ambiguous to me. And then when I got in, I actually get to choose a specialization, a domain that I get to choose. And of course, now that the chance is given, I would choose to specialize in AI. So that's how I pivoted. So, but then since I wasn't in a related background, so why be selected and be a fit for that, right? What I see is that a lot of these AI systems these days is broken down into multiple dimensions. So one of it, you go into the algorithms, you try to get your PhD, really good academia, right? To go into the algorithm research, and typically you'll join a big research lab like DeepMind or something like this. But there's another side of applied AI and really productionizing the system. It goes down to a lot of fundamental core of how do we really make use of AI systems in the real world, in a world where the input could be very, very different from what we anticipate in our lab environment. How do we safeguard it, and how do we anticipate situations that we didn't predict to begin with, and how do we mitigate the risk of the goal? So that understanding the underlying enterprise infrastructure is extremely important to productionize these AI systems.
I'm glad you bring that up about the ambiguity and how this technology is moving. So, Fabrian and Jun Kai, like just to tell you a bit more about our audience. So these are people who are young, maybe they're in their teens and 20s. They're students who are trying to navigate this space and primarily builders as well. And maybe they want to enter the job market or even with entrepreneurial mindsets. But one thing that I like that you highlighted is about the ambiguity of this domain and how difficult it is to navigate when there's features rolling out week in, week out, and there's so many disruptions to the technology. So, if I could ask you both, how do you navigate this domain and keep up to date with this so that you can get the most effective output both from yourselves and for the roles that you're in?
Okay, should I go first? Right. Actually, the ambiguity was further raised only with the rise of generative AI when ChatGPT was popularized back in November 2022. It started at GPT-3, right? Around there. And then that's where many of these technology come out, and there's this whole new role of prompt engineering, prompt engineers. This role was created, but first it died down today. It doesn't mean that it's not important anymore, but we figure out that software engineers or business domain, business analysts could be the prompt engineer. We don't need a specialized role for that. And then that's where we come up with things like rack design, right? Where how do you consume data with our AI? And that's finally we got the evolution of agents. So if we go down this path, the ambiguity is whereby the different models that are coming out, the different techniques in prompting, the different techniques in building agents, and then the different protocols that we work with companies trying to standardize different protocols such as I think MCP and A2A is some of these common protocols, and the payment companies are trying to standardize what's a common protocol for agentic AI to make payments. I think Visa is trying to come up with this or standardize these open protocols. So with this new space, new technology up and coming every day, it's extremely hard to build a system that is uh, kind of like future-proof yourself. There might be architectural design that have to be changed when a new tech stack come out, but there could be a tech stack that come out that doesn't quite fit well into the whole ecosystem and get discarded in 1-2 months time. So this is where the ambiguity lies. So as a engineer building these AI applications, how do you determine what you actually have to use a gut feeling? You have to maybe have your own vision on how this technology will move moving forward. If whenever a new framework or protocol that's brought up, do you think it actually makes sense to fit into the wider ecosystem, or it's just an idea that doesn't really quite fit well and be discarded after a few months? So gut feeling is important. It is unfortunately that's the case based on your own experience. So if you do not have seen how typically this whole systems come together and get integrated, it might be very hard to pick a tech stack. And that's also a common questions that I face even at my work. They ask what would be the best way moving forward. There could be more than one correct way. There could be 2, 3, 4. But what best fits your organization goal? And that's where we will decide on the tech stack.
Yeah. So I guess adding on to what Jun Kai said, I mean, you talk a lot about gut feeling and all that. I guess it's putting it in another way, it's more like having a vision and trying to understand what is the next wave of AI. And the first thing you were asking how to keep up to date. I think quick ways also you can subscribe to like newsletters. I do that, right? Newsletters, and then also subscribing to relevant like LinkedIn or social media channels that will give you that quick overview, and from there you deep dive into whatever areas that you're interested in. Because yes, every week also there will be, let's say, new models coming up, new concepts coming up, etc. So that's one way to keep up to the end. Let's say, for example, now the from prompt engineering has evolved to like context engineering. Now there's this thing called agent skills engineering, which is rapidly on the rise. And so getting up to date and getting your hands dirty on these things are very important. And I would say, just trying to think forward, have like a vision or like a founder's mindset in that sense, means if you think based on all of what you've researched, and let's say talking to industry experts and understanding the landscape, what do you see down the line in, let's say, 5 years time, and how do you build those skills that is future proof, so that even, let's say, the agents become better and better and better, right? And agents become, let's say, better at software engineering and all that. What are the kind of skill sets that you can have that you think an agent will not replace so easily? Yeah.
I think one common theme in both of your answers was that in the future, there's going to be a reduction in the specialized roles like business analyst or maybe sales analyst, things like that, which can be easily solved by agents. Right. So, in that sense, industry is going to transform very rapidly. So, from students' point of view, how important would you say is it to develop concepts in today's day and age when many things are rapidly evaporating in the sense that agents are able to do them? And the scope of agents' performance is only going to increase in the future. So, how do you weigh, let's say, conceptual understanding to from what you learn in the academics to actually understanding the domain and using AI more to do your work? Because many students sometimes they do projects, but then you feel a bit guilty about it because you did not actually contribute that much to it. So, how do you weigh the two?
You mean to actually develop skills whereby there could be agents that might be
Yes. How, do you give more importance to, let's say, understanding concepts, developing skills, or actually using, let's say, understanding how agents work and using them to do your work?
Hmm. So, just so here comes a point, right? For fresh graduates, it's a little bit of a challenge because the agents might have the same knowledge and intellect to some sense, to a certain degree. So we might be on par, and in fact, sometimes the agents might be the one teaching us how to approach a certain problem or what's the answer to this particular challenge. But where a human come in is very different because we have critical thinking skill. We will come up with different structures on how to actually, or different perspective on how to tackle this problem, and we probably have a better understanding of how we should, which approach we should take instead. Because when we give a problem to the agent, it might just without asking further clarification question, it will straight away go into a solution, and most of the time it might not fully answer the questions you want, and that's where we have to tweak it a bit here and there. And to understand that I need to tweak the answer shows that you understand this challenge in the first place. You might not have the solution, but you really know the problem well. And when you see a solution, you know where are the other gaps that have to be filled. What are some of the solutions have to be tweaked, and that's where you reiterate with this agent. So that's where I think as a human working with the agent, we really need to have this critical thinking skills, which I don't think the agent could do it that well yet without a iterative loop. But of course, if autonomous agent comes into play, then things might change slightly. So that's where I see how humans still work with agents.
So, like adding on to that, so especially when you want to work on a project, it might have certain new technical requirements that you personally don't know. So, do you recommend that you should like learn, understand first, then build, or should you like build and learn along the way when you're trying to figure out something?
So I mean, also related to your question and your question about like, do we still need that conceptual
Yep.
understanding? So to thrive and be more future proof, right? I feel still need that deep engineering expertise and understanding, not in terms of let's say, okay, now I need to like in syntax and that kind of things, but understanding how the architectures work, what are the best practices in the engineering world. Because when you are, let's say you are tackling technical requirements, how right requirements is one thing, and then the next step is translating it into design. Usually when in the school level you will just write code a project. If it works, full stop, right. That's I mean that's every student, so it's okay. But in a real world setting, having thing just work does not make the cut, right? You have to think in terms of like how do you want these systems to scale? How do you want, what are the best practices? What kind of security, well architected practices, and all the other guardrails, considerations, etc., to make this system robust as possible. No downtime, right? Scalability, let's say, to millions of users, that kind of thing. So once you start to think deeply about this kind of requirements, the design of the architecture completely changes. AI can only give, let's say, recommendations, right? But you will need that understanding to validate, is it making the right choice? Or if not, you will be the one need to, as Jun Kai said, iteratively guiding also that AI to making the best possible design of the system before proceeding to implementation. Right? So you need that understanding first, need that deep dive expertise, requirements, design before you can even go into implementation. Yeah.
And like follow up to that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have like a very dynamic day to day. So what kind of problems do you would spend most of your time thinking about while working?
Um, for me, I think personally I like to tackle things that are innovative and novel. So I always think about how certain as is flows could be done better. And typically, if I work with startups or I speak with them, that's something that I could always tackle. So I think some examples would be if we look at the agentic AI space. How do we actually build multi-agent systems? How do we overcome things like context window? How do we manage the context, cost optimize a solution? So typically, this involve pretty novel and creative solutions to successfully build something like that. And how we will go about is actually look at experiments that other people have done, and then see if somehow we could apply it in the problems that we are trying to solve. So with the startup space, that would be one. Novel and innovation. On a larger scale, typically we will try to look at AI transformation, what it can change. Typically, I would like to see revenue generating use cases. For example, would be financial market analysis. I think this would be a problem that is tackled not just by companies but by individual consumers as well. They want to be good at trading the stock markets, right? So I think AI agents really excel here because right now, we do not need to read all the financial reports ourselves. AI can do a really excellent job at it, aggregating the data and consolidating some a strategy that makes sense for you. But the challenge here comes whereby if you give everything to AI to do the job, is not going to do a good job. If not, everyone's going to be pretty good at stock markets right now. So that's where you really need to understand certain fundamentals, certain strategies. You read up on the strategies. You can refine the strategies with the AI based on the market data, and then based on that final strategy that you develop, mostly in the form of prompt, it's gonna steer and guide the whole AI on what kind of framework and how you should go about thinking when looking at this financial report and aggregating the data, and that will be unique and special to you. So these are what at least I work with many individuals and also hedge funds to actually look into such a problem. I think evidently it's good because I think we saw even Anthropic launch the cloud for finance. I think this is a product that's pretty widely adopted across the world. So this is a very specific segment that I think AI is doing really well.
Yes. And for myself, another big segment that I'm working with relation AI is this space for GenAI accelerated modernization. So even though GenAI, I mean, we're always thinking about cutting edge and innovation, right? There's also more fundamental kind of space to be looked at. Like this is a huge problem space also is there are a lot of big enterprises, right? They really want to innovate, right? They really want to innovate, but they have all these legacy systems, right? Let's say written in legacy.net or Java, those kind of legacy systems that they want to modernize, right? That is currently on premises and all that, want to modernize, but it's gonna take ages for them. That may contain a lot of undocumented code, right? So developer, let's say a new developer that comes in, they're gonna take ages just to read and understand the code before even thinking how to modernize, and then transforming that code to a modernized state, whether it's starting with, let's say, a version and language upgrades, etc. And then ultimately transforming the architecture, bringing it to the cloud, or that kind of things. That transformation journey would take years, usually, right? So then the next question is, how can we use Gen AI to really accelerate this whole journey, right? So that they are able to be in a position that they can then a modernized, let's say, kind of architecture where they can then easily click on the innovations which they want to do, right? So working with, let's say, customers, if they have legacy, right, how can we effectively use generative AI tools to let's say reverse engineer the code, get detailed documentation from the code first, and then from there come up with a, let's say, a systematic approach or systematic plan to be able to do that modernization, whether and the step by step kind of approach in that large scale kind of format.
Okay. For me personally, like when I'm applying for like internships or jobs,
Yes.
I think it's very confusing because there's so many role titles like AI engineer, Gen AI engineer, solution architect, ML engineer. So, how would you best describe your role in a day-to-day sense? Like, how do you compare it with a traditional software engineering role or ML engineering role? And how, okay, what makes, what are the interesting aspects of it, or what are the fun aspects of your role that you can say?
As a solutions architect.
Yes, as a solutions architect.
Right. So I guess one of the key differentiators is that we work directly with customers, right? So customers engagement. We are helping customers to solve problems, to innovate with AI, to modernize their systems, right? And for example, I think maybe some of the other, let's say, AI engineering roles, they may be more focusing on, let's say, the specific product of a company. You are innovating within that for that product or for the use cases of a company. So you can think in terms of maybe when you look at roles, which one are more external facing or which one are looking to innovate in terms of internal use case. So that's one aspect. Then another thing is that we are always looking to, let's say, also like how can we build replicable assets, right? So that let's say for the open source community. So I do a lot of, let's say, open source contributions and all that, so that the wider community will be able to adopt all these kind of best practices and use cases, and we are able to grow this ecosystem.
Okay, okay. Um, so I think an external facing role is that certainly has its like fun aspects as well as its challenges. And uh, how would you recommend learning different aspects, especially external facing role requires more communication skills and presentation skills probably. So what do you think are the main additional skills that you would recommend students apart from their technical backgrounds?
Yeah, so soft skills, as you mentioned, is very important. Communication skills, right? You're talking to, let's say, key stakeholders of different enterprises. So it's important to communicate clearly, and have that technical authority, right, when you are speaking. So how do you communicate technical concepts in an easy to understand manner, and in a manner that can appeal to, let's say, both technical as well as non-technical stakeholders? That's one important skills to learn. And then I guess, relating to communication skills, also presentation skills, if because you'll be, let's say presenting in a one-to-one setting or presenting to when if you are doing events or conferences, basically how do you be able to effectively get your message across? So these are very important, skills that you have to learn.
That's wonderful.
Just to follow up on that as well, I think both of you mentioned, so you mentioned that you're in an external facing role and you mentioned that you work with startups and companies. So something that I'm rather curious about is how has interacting with these companies and stakeholders evolved over time? Because from what I see right now, AI has become sort of a buzzword. You put AI in your startup or company name, and then a YC will come or a venture capitalist will come pour $1 million into you. So are the requirements changing on your side as well, when you potential clients speak to you or in terms of the solutions they're looking for?
Sure. I think I guess I could answer this from a perspective of what I observe on the market wide, right? So I think industry wide, as we all could see from the news, that we all understand that companies are prioritizing AI investments. That's for sure. So a lot of money are flowing into the AI space. As you mentioned, VCs are throwing money there, right? So access to capital is a lot easier. So that's one. But again, that is specific to the startup space, right? Yeah, so that's one area. But if we talk about existing enterprises or companies, I think in the board, AI is always the key topic. And from an initiatives perspective, I think day to day we can see companies announcing their tech transformation strategy and a budget. And typically there's an AI budget allocated. So that's the difference here that we are seeing. Companies are prioritizing AI workloads. They are forming up AI COE team, Central of Excellence team, to drive AI adoption enterprise wide. So this is what companies are doing. So that's the additional project they want to build. And apart from that, it's also a forcing function for internet employees to use AI tools. I think if we look at Accenture, we saw that Vinny Sweet recently mentioned that all employees should be using AI tools, and that will be a metrics for your promotion, especially for the senior levels. So I mean, this statement, yeah, in my opinion, is um, it's kind of insinuate that it sounds like the senior um management in that, like in a group of people, they might be more resistant to adopting these AI tools. So yeah, so I think VC funds, existing enterprises who are throwing all their budgets into AI projects, transformation, and also enforcing that the employees actually use AI tools. These are the largest changes we are seeing.
I think, following up on that, do you see most of these solutions that the companies want to implement, are they more customer-facing AI solutions or like internal productivity boosting AI solutions? How is the landscape moving? Yeah.
So at least from my observation, it seems like the first part will be actually productivity and automation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the first part would be actually searching for your data.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past we have to flip through files, going through folders manually to look for things. These days we could ask the AI. So some of the use case could be asked about your company's leave policy, insurance policy, or what's my leave balance for the days. So these are some productivity too. Automation would be something like if you look at document processing, I think these are common
Mm-hmm.
tools. So as mentioned, for customer facing, these are typically to change the customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
If you know, call centers are the number one driver for number one projects that companies embark on, simply because of cost reduction. So we know many people's job are impacted by the reduction of human call agents. So that's one space. Then the last space would be actually companies are focused on transforming how their business operates, and that's a revenue generating model. That would be a little bit harder, but some of these use cases could be, we can be agentifying the e-commerce experience. I think big players like Amazon is doing it. We could see Google trying to make their own Google shopping experience. Shopify is doing it as well. So e-commerce space, or even a personalized recommendations engine, or even a AI assisted sales speech to actually dynamically regenerate the sales pitch based on understanding of your consumer behaviors and their past interactions. So these are certain of these different dimension of use cases that the world is pursuing in the AI space.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I understand from what you're saying is that AI is being adopted across the spectrum right now, and that companies are like running in order to keep up with each other in terms of the pace. And that's when I see some of the tech CEOs like because they come up with some of the controversial opinions. But I see that there's a lot of split. I'm not sure if you saw those Jensen Huang recently saying that if a 500K software engineer does not use up 250K worth of credits, then they're not worth being a 500K engineer. Then on the flip side, there's also Linus Torvalds, who says that anybody who says that like having a certain number of lines of code generated by AI is a must, then they don't know what they're talking about. And he was talking about Elon Musk there. So, where do you stand on this personally? Like, do you think that output is what's going to be really important, or is it more about the quality of what's being produced?
If you ask about my personal opinion, I saw the statement on Jensen
Yeah.
Huang. In my opinion, I thought it was a great marketing statement because it really to the head. So, but it is true that in terms of coding, coding has become one of the most productivity gainer in the whole.
Do you think you could use 250K worth credits in India?
I'm not sure. So fortunately, right now I have access to pretty much any number of tokens that I require. I personally do not share how many tokens I use of my personal use and both work related use. But 250K is pretty hard, I believe. But in 1 year, probably yes. And with autonomous coding agents coming out, who knows if I run an open source somewhere and code certain projects for me and start even running a company, then 250K is easily achievable.
Mhm.
Yeah, my opinion is the quality of output.
Quality.
Yeah, quality of output is definitely the most important, right? How are you effectively using the tools that you have, and not necessarily just burning tokens, but maximizing that use of a certain number of tokens, right? Let's say you have a fixed number of tokens, right? Because there's always like there's a pricing tiers in a real kind of agentic tool when you're using. How can you most effectively use a certain number of tokens to get the maximum quality output? I think that's very important, and that will come down to, let's say, the effectiveness of your context engineering. How are you leveraging the tools that you have, whether it's MCP servers or agent skills, etc., to help in that output, especially as very curated prompts. Yeah.
So with all of these higher management requirements and everything, and also increase in productivity by
Yeah.
using Gen AI tools. So how do you think in today's age, how is Gen AI affecting the entire software development lifecycle? And yes, your insights on this.
Got it. Right. So I think I will see Gen AI transforming the entire software development lifecycle. So now the role of a software engineer has changed, right? From fundamentally, I mean, just a few years back, a software engineer would be writing the code, right? How do you best effectively write the code from scratch? But now with Gen AI, we are using Gen AI to write code. Let's just all be honest. All the software engineers are using as long as you have access to the Gen AI tools, you are using Gen AI to, let's say, write your code and help with all the planning and all that. So the role has become more supervisory in that sense, right? I like to say help where Gen AI is kind of like your, let's say, your junior software engineer, and you are the principal software engineer, right? Pair programming with that junior software engineer and teaching it the best practices. So in a software development lifecycle, I mean, there's many stages, right? From, let's say, the planning to requirements generation, and that's usually the product owner and product manager kind of um role in a traditional SDLC. But now you're also able to use GenAI to streamline that, let's say, from days, right? Coming up with the detailed requirements, the scope, the detailed scope of the project, etc. How can now you can use Gen AI to be able to come up with that entire thing in, let's say, a few hours. But the idea is the input still have to come from, let's say, a product owner, product manager, and you're using AI to accelerate that process, right? Then after that, it will be the defining of technical and technical as well as the non-functional and functional requirements. All that at every stage of this SDLC, from the planning to requirements, and ultimately the logical as well as the functional design, technical design, all these planning stage can now be accelerated with AI, right? And then after that design, so I mean, design is usually it can be a combination of the architects with the software developers, and when the next stage of the software development actually happens in the construction kind of phase where you are developing the actual code, then the developers will leverage that. So at each point of this SDLC, now we have this a relatively new concept thing that started last year called AI driven development lifecycle, where now instead of just using AI in isolation, like as individual productivity tools, right? Let's say a software engineer using AI for their own development. How can we use that also in a collaborative manner, right? With all these different stakeholders involved, right? All the different stakeholders of an SDLC involved, to be able to engage in this um collaboration, collaborative AI use, and let's say a project that can take months, right? To fully develop an app that can take months to fully develop. Now you can just take days to develop because of AI being engaged in this in a collaborative manner, right? And ultimately, it will be the one you just imagine like a big project. How do you split it eventually to the detailed user stories, the detailed units of work that can be done with the help of AI? And then from there, let's say each software engineer takes charge of individual features, right? And then all these from start to end, and ultimately the testing to the deployment and deployment all the way to production. This entire end-to-end flow can be streamlined with and accelerated with GenAI.
So from what I can understand, so Gen AI is not only just a code generator, so
Yes,
it's basically accelerating the entire development pipeline.
correct,
I
correct.
think that this changes what it means to be a strong engineer today.
Yes, I would say it changes what it means to be a strong engineer today. right? So now it's also how are you effectively using the agentic tools available to build um to build the best possible system. But first, so as I said, deep engineering expertise is still required in terms of understanding architectural. Make you as an engineer is still making the architectural decisions, right? AI can give a recommendation, but you are the one who will shape that architectural decision. Um, let's let's say you are building a let's take AI use cases like a chatbot or document processing pipeline, right? What are what at each stage, let's say what kind of compute you're using, what kind of gateways you're using, what are the securities efforts and all that, all the nitty-gritty, all these will come to the architectural decisions that you have to make as an engineer, right? And then when it comes to the technical kind of uh very technical details, that is also on you to validate, right? So AI can only give a plan, but it's on the engineer to understand that whole ecosystem to ensure that in the best practice. And then after that also in terms of software testing, right? Software testing ultimately, I mean, we are using AI also to, you cannot just trust the AI as it is and leave it to do its own thing, right? You have to have robust kind of testing in place. How do you know that the test cases that let's say they are generating are correct, right? And meets your requirements. So all these have to be taken into consideration. And I would say the deep knowledge needed is what will make a engineer strong. Yeah.
So that's a very in-depth analysis. Thank you. But as I understand, like you mentioned before as well about moving from the SDLC to the AIDLC now, and you've worked with a lot of teams across sectors
Yeah.
in the sort of modernization move and integrating AI. When it comes to legacy systems, are there like any patterns that you notice, any wrong practices that maybe AI is really helping revolutionize and move forward with, or are there still areas that AI is still getting stuck on when it comes to modernization specifically?
Right. So I mean the modernization process is definitely easier said than done, right? So the first step is when going back to that legacy system example is usually it's reverse engineering, is understanding a legacy code base, and you can use AI definitely to generate documentation. But how reliable is this documentation and all that, and how when you let's say you are modernizing, you don't want that system to break, right? That system has to be intact. So how do we, let's say, effectively migrate without breaking that system? So that's where, let's say, software testing becomes very important, having that test harnesses, be it regression testing, etc., to ensure that the migration modernization is done safely. And that comes also the challenge, and how do you ensure that the test is done correctly? And then that's when you will look into like the details of, let's say, um when you have a application, they're usually not in isolation, right? There are many dependencies across different applications. There are dependencies within the applications, let's say within microservices. Um, you need to use the AI also to understand all these dependencies, all these API contracts, to be able to yeah, really be able to effectively make that shift. Yeah, and that is in itself is also easier said than done, that back for validation and all that. So yeah. Yeah.
So from the conversations here, so I can see that AI is like moving from like a tool to more like an infrastructure. So it's no longer like uh, we can use AI. It should be like how we use AI. Like AI is no longer a suggestion; it's a requirement for like most of the things we are building today.
Mm.
So, what do you think are the best practices while using, especially this new Gen AI architecture or Gen AI infrastructure to build that most people miss? And um, yeah, what are the best practices that you recommend while using this?
Mm. I would say first thing, context engineering is very important, right? We have shifted from prompt engineering to context engineering, because once you are encountering larger code bases, just having the AI analyze the entire code base in a single session is not possible. So how do you, let's say, build a systematic like hierarchical context, manage the context effectively? So let's say if you have a large code base, the AI will be able to understand what the entire context without having to reread your entire code base and burning a lot of tokens. So it's about effectively having good effectively building and spending time building that context so that you are able to leverage the AI effectively to do the task. Then another thing is also having good guidelines, right? Guidelines for the AI in your different projects. I mean, if let's say, I mean, like what kind of GenAI tools are you using currently?
I think I personally use a lot of Cloud Code. I used to use Codex. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say in the example of Cloud Code, right? Cloud Code always have this thing called Cloud.md, right?
Mm.
Cloud.md, which is defining that entire workflow for the application. So how do you, in the context of Cloud Code, how do you define a very, very good Cloud.md so that it will be able to utilize those best practices that you are managing it to do.
Mm.
I mean, one example that I like to do for my own workflow is, let's say, also using agents effectively, right? So that you can do parallel workflows. I don't know if that's something you're already doing at. And that's one thing that you can think about. And the other thing is also the leveraging tools around tools that are available around to help make the work simpler. So things like MCP, model context protocol, things like agent skills where you just think of it like it's giving you an an instruction or like a recipe to make that best possible task to have the best possible outcome of a task, right? So skills together with MCP and other kinds of external tools to be able to strengthen that and your agentic workflow. Yeah.
So I think one more thing that we come across is attention. So especially while using coding agents, attention, or usually hallucination and attention are like very important things that we need to look for. So how real is especially like the context window or the whole entire attention for the particular documents that you use relevant, or even like how often do you face hallucination, especially when you're using such tools?
Um, I think with retrieving context, right, hallucination is actually largely minimized. And to battle that, things like citations are actually introduced. Citations is one way where we could easily cite a particular statement to the source. So in-text citation. And further on, whereby a certain piece of statement contains too much claims, a further step could be introduced to identify all the claims within the response of the AI and then use a fact checker. It could be referencing some ground truth or it could be a web search to fact check all of these claims. So hallucination is tackled in such manner, and many of startups has been coming up with these uh, solutions to actually enforce this. And even with Anthropic themselves, in-text citation is part of the API, it's part of the API call. So that's for hallucination. As for how important is the vast amount of context, right? That's why contexts are oftenly retrieved through their similarity, right? Only their how relevant it is for this particular task. But of course, sometimes it's a long running task. We might push our limits up to 1 million token context window, right? 1 or 2 million, depending on which frontier model you're using. But therefore, there is such a benchmark called needle in a haystack problem. I think it was introduced quite long ago, whereby the test is actually to find a small piece of information within the large context. And that's where we try to benchmark these models. Although it's reportedly to perform pretty well, but it is always strongly advised to use the as minimal context as possible to best increase the accuracy. So functions like summarization, compacting the particular session is actually introduced. And even time travel in Landgraph agent state, we actually look at things like time travel back. Why do we want to reverse back? Because sometimes we might digress from the main task we're using. We could be debugging something. We could be performing separate analysis on a subtopic. Now we go back to the main topic. I just want to bring the summarized research back to the main topic. Or maybe we want to discard even completely, and that's where time travel is extremely important. So context engineering is still extremely important. Never ever try to push your limit to 1 million context window and think that you can pass in garbage. So as a well-known machine learning statement, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So that's still the fundamentals are still important.
So, just a random question. So, do you think using this process, at least in a slight scale, can lead to like non-deterministic outputs, or like when you prompt the same thing many times, you there's a very good possibility that you might get different recommendations or different uh, solutions. Or how real is this, and is it a real concern, or yeah?
I think if we look at statistically how the models are actually designed, is real because NLP models are meant to be non-deterministic in the early days, in the early models, and that's why we got these parameters like temperature dot
Mm-hmm.
p dot k, right? Because in the past you want the AI system to be like a human, not to keep repeating what it says, but these days with Gen AI, the answers are so great that we actually want it to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Although theoretically with the temperature set to zero and the right parameters are set, we should always the probability distribution should always be quite large.
Mm-hmm.
And then we should always pick the most probable token. But somehow sometimes it doesn't happen to be always the case. I think it's an ongoing myth that not a myth, it's an ongoing problem that researchers are still trying to figure out whether is it with the compute hardware or where's the loss of precision happening. So it's an ongoing problem. So that's the case. But
Yeah.
although if you want something factual, you should try to as much sets the controls to be as tight as possible. But sometimes the responses might not guarantee to be the same given the same input.
Mm-hmm. So, does this affect like collaborative work, especially if you're working with different engineers, or yeah, where is the main pain point that you face?
Because due to the non-deterministic
Yes.
outputs, is it? So I feel like in a collaborative skill, and that's why it's very important to have like guidelines enforced, right? So I mean, different coding agents are doing it, have different kind of ways of doing it. But one way, let's say you have those guidelines in, let's say, a skills kind of thing, or steering documents, which will enforce the best practices for that. And let's say we have a particular I'm just going into like let's say a particular serverless service called API gateway, right? And then you want to enforce the best practices around using this service. And then of course there's many different ways of doing it, and the output can always be different, right, in terms of enforcement. So how can we, let's say, have best practices detailed document for all the different, let's say, features or services that you're using, so that anything that have when they are building certain features, right, based on all these best practices, they are able to just get that relevant skill. For example, retrieve the relevant skill, and then the AI know, oh, okay, so for this the details are and from there, the with best practices enforced, it will try to minimize that non-deterministic output in terms of, let's say, the architectural recommendations and all that. Yeah.
Okay, so I think at the end of the day, it comes back to like human in the loop, trying to make the best decision.
So it's very important to have that system in place. I would say that to you have a robust system in place that will enable it to it's like a lot of work at the start,
Mm-hmm.
but after that, once you have that I would say architectural setup, right? So let's say it's in terms of skills or MCP servers and all that, then from there, when moving forward, it will be much easier. Yeah.
Okay, so again, it comes down to what is more important. Is it like technical depth, or like in general like system level thinking?
I
So
think if I could
yeah.
zoom out on that, I, one thing that I see is that, like, I'm not sure if you guys saw the statistic recently, but we've hit an all-time low on Stack Overflow searches, the questions being posted in the last 1 year. And recently, I also came across this quote from Sam Altman. He said that AI is soon to become a utility like electricity or water, which I feel is a bit of a stretch. But do you think that we're there at the point that it's so ingrained into the system, and or are we still a bit of a way from successfully integrating it so that it's part of the life cycle and the development?
You mean you mean as a whole in the society or specifically to development?
Specifically to technology, you can talk about as a whole in society as well, if you like.
Specifically to technology, I think honestly I think AI would actually be pretty much the to coding at least it will be the centerpiece. But of course, we couldn't forget about the fundamentals of setting up best access control or whatever. Getting your data ready or data foundations are extremely important as well. So, but then if we talk about whether how far are we from AI actually, as your statement go, AI as a utility, um, honestly, I think we will be headed that direction, and it's going to be inevitable because AI is probably going to be part of every single application on a mobile phone, and mobile phone is pretty much integrated into our entire life right now. We could leave the house without a wallet, but not your mobile phone, right? So AI is going to be there. With the rise of voice control AI as well, who know your glasses will be voice controlled. Who knows the whole smart living will be changed. Smart living wasn't adopted that widely because the voice control systems aren't that amazing yet, but it's gonna become the state of the art in the future. So yeah, AI will be seen in every aspect of your life probably in the future, and it's important to adapt it. I think the more important question is what's gonna be left for the humans, right? What are the humans interactions, human connections? I think that would be something that's important to retain.
Yeah, I agree that I think I see the society heading there. In terms of technology, I think it's yeah. In the technology space, it's very advanced. In the societal space, the non-tech folks are still catching up. I can imagine if I'm not surprised if one day the let's say a mobile phone, like all the application is not our traditional kind of application that we know now, but instead it's like agent tools, like you mentioned agent as a tool. Like maybe you're saying, instead of having a weather app, it's just using an agent to call the weather API, right? Or in terms of messages, all that may be transformed and be more like agent centric rather than just a application itself. Yeah, so I see the landscape heading towards that way.
Maybe moving towards AI in society as well, as you mentioned. What do you think about that? Um, Both in terms of how much it has been adopted and your personal opinion on it?
Um, Honestly, I love it a lot with AI coming in because we could do things like trip planning. I could give it a simple command to actually pull out all my receipts in my Gmail, consolidate, do a breakdown of what I've been spending or whatever. Honestly, it's better than the banking app where I go to my financial page to see because then it's in a single bank. But right now, if you have access to my email, it can give a brief summary and I can give it multiple sources as well. So AI is gonna be extremely a good assistant. It's like having a PA. Right now we couldn't afford one, but in the future it's gonna be so cost effective to have a personal assistant for everyone. Not just that, that's virtual, right? In the physical world, I think physical AI is going to be huge. Maybe these days we'll see AI robots going around to clean your whole the NTU campus or self-driving vehicles. So and even AI drones, right, delivering, although it's only blocked by regulatory, if not the technology is there. So AI and the physical AI is gonna be embedded into the whole Earth and even space data centers. I think Elon Musk is talking about that as well. So yeah, it's gonna be in every part of the world, and that is why I came back to the same question: what's left for the human interaction and connections? So in the future, that would be the question: what's left for the
Yeah,
humans?
if I can mention, we already have robots surveilling NTU campus. So they're our security, they're sort of our autonomous security guards. So they're not humanoids, but they're four-wheeled robots. And I'm sure if you walk around the campus, you might bump into one.
I
And
think especially during weekends and off-peak hours, they're everywhere. Yeah.
it's very, I don't know, it feels a bit cyberpunk to me. I think your point about human interaction becomes even more important in today's day and age. I read about this article recently where it was mentioned that because there's so much, we're so online now, and that our entire world revolves around this digital platform. And on top of that, we're getting so much content, both generated by humans and these days there's this term AI slop on our social media and work and life in general. So people are more and more moving towards getting that connection and getting like a physical experience. So that's why that tied back to one of the analysis by this researcher that concerts have now become a big thing again in the last 1 year because people want to go to that so that they get that sense of being alive and getting that connection with their friends or with even other random people again. So I think in that sense, yeah, AI is like it's definitely transforming things very interesting manner. But yeah, do you have an opinion on it as well?
Yeah. So I mean, I agree with whatever Jun Kai said. I see AI shifting towards the physical AI realm, and that will only get bigger and bigger as the agent. I mean, I think that is the trend, right? So like what you say, robotics, and also spatial computing. That's just gonna get large, more and more. Last time, for example, in the spatial computing, people used to have like I mean, it started off with more of headsets, but now it's becoming into like cool glasses kind of thing. And that I think that as the hardware improves, the physical AI space will just be booming in that near future, right? And then in terms of day to day, have you all heard of OpenClaw?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
It's a big thing now. I mean, this year it exploded. I would see AI as a personal assistant just accelerated also, and as people are building tools, and as long you have good guardrails and securities around these kind of tools like OpenClaw, right? It will become it will become the mainstream in the future, and that would just change how we interact with our, let's say, our mobile applications and web applications and all that.
Okay, I think it was a great conversation. I think let's take a seat back and have a mid-session reset. So
So this is something that we do for all
yeah.
our guests. So this is sort of a fun mid-session quick fire round. So the purpose is that we're going to give you a one-line question, and you need to say whatever pops up the first thing in your mind. So then we can have a conversation on it. So do you want to start off?
Sure. So basically, you guys are using AI in everyday work and even in your personal life. So, what is the one AI tool that you use almost every day?
Actually, on my mobile phone, I thought I asked ChatGPT a lot of questions
Hmm.
about anything.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, ChatGPT. Um,
Good for me.
okay.
Hero.
Any particular model of cloud?
Currently the cloud Opus 4.6.
Oh, plus 1.6. Yeah, that ate up all my GitHub tokens this month.
I think even for me personally, I have ChatGPT app on my phone, so I think it's mood. Even Google is trying to adopt this. So instead of like Googling something, it's more now like ChatGPTing something like to get more Gen AI generic response. Yeah, so I think yeah, I would say ChatGPT as well. So okay, next question, Shreyas.
So what is your favorite LLM?
It's cloud.
Clouds and interview.
I think I think it's no longer a controversial question. It's just
I think it's very clearly becoming the
yeah.
industry leader now. Personally, I have a rather interesting answer to that myself. I think my favorite LLM is Quen. Because even though I use Claude a lot, as you mentioned, for coding related tasks, and I use ChatGPT a lot as well because for general purpose it's still pretty good. But Quen is open source, and you can fine tune it, perform Laura, QLoRa, then build projects on it. Personally, coming from a robotics background, because robotics is also adopting a lot of Gen AI based use cases, I see the power in having open source models because not only can you fine tune them, you can also quantize them so that they can be deployed on edge. So, because I'm sure you guys must have seen the AI-based variables and things like that. So, having that sense of flexibility to deploy locally on different devices and hardware, I feel like that might become a superpower, as you mentioned, for physical AI as well. Yeah.
Okay, I next question. So okay, so it was a very clear answer on what is the one thing that you use. So what's the one AI tool that you think is like very overhyped right now?
Overhyped.
You know, there's those apps that they claim, oh, you want prompt, you can build the entire app. Yes, the clip stuff there, yeah, that's overhyped. Yeah.
Hmm. I feel so. So I think most of my, especially it's very common in my YouTube ad space, and it's like, oh, we can build a website. Someone built a website. Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So there is very general consensus that, especially designing apps or website require a lot of expertise and design even before like
Correct.
coding it.
Right.
So yeah, I think I.
Definitely concept
Mhm,
driven development, right? You still need to come up all the design specifications, all that before you
mhm.
you
Just type
generate.
in a prompt and
Yeah.
I think there's two parts to it, right? One is to like, of course, have like a very big consumer platform like Amazon. Of course, you need like the design engineers working on the front end, and you need an entire team. But these days, there's also this concept of having these products rolling out week in, week out, and people are vibe coding entire companies. For them, having this power with AI that it can vibe code the like a basic front end, even in Streamlit or Vercel,
Yes.
then I think there's the two sides to it. Of course, it's good in that sense that you can roll out a product really fast, but at the same time, as you mentioned rightly, design engineering is not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean I had watched these kind of Insta reels, right, where the person vibe coded the entire app in one prompt, deployed it on the app store, and then got a bunch of one-star reviews because people downloaded the app and realized that the engineering practice is so bad, the app was so buggy once it reached a certain scale, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I guess it takes market testing to a new.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, let us take a quick break now and then we'll come back with more questions.
All right.
Yeah, welcome back. So we have a few more rapid fire questions left. So I think for Fabian, we can start off with this. Which is your most favorite study spot in NTU?
Ah, you know the business library, the one, the library
Yes.
for students? Yeah, I like to study there because it's less crowded, and you can get good sitting spots there.
I think I personally have the same opinion because Levinam is so crowded. Yeah.
As an alum, what is your favorite food spot in NTU?
Connect 71. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I love it because it's quiet. I can almost always get a seat, and then I love the mazis over there and the rice bowls.
you know, I have a very interesting story about Connect 71. Do you know why it's called that?
No, actually.
So Connect 71 is called that because it's located inside the building where all the early stage startups were incubated at NTU. And before becoming a cafe, that place was like a space where all of these people could come together and network, meet new people, explore ideas. Then in some time, NTU decided to open like a small cafe over there, and they decided to call it Connect 71. 71 because it's 71 Nanyang Avenue, I think. So Connect because of the networking.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the backstory. Didn't know that.
Okay, next rapid fire question. So, what is like one misconception about AI that you had in before you entered the field and that turned out to be wrong?
Not that any I could think of.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think um, I was over optimistic about AI in how, I mean, definitely AI can be, you can use AI to automate a lot of things. But then I was over optimistic in terms of its ability to fully automate without any human intervention. I mean, once you're in the industry, you know, human in the loop is always still very important.
Hmm. I think for me, it's also the same. Like after the first few times vibe coding something, I was like, "Oh, AI can do everything," and then it came down crashing. So yeah, okay. The final rapid fire question is like, what is the one area where AI is headed that you're personally most excited about?
Personally, I think somewhere like an autonomous agent, like what we're trying to have. I think OpenClaw, what is achieving is something that I'm really excited about. I believe in having a personal assistant for
Hmm.
every individual people. The only concern now is with the permissions that we are giving it. Because we do not want that much human in the loop all the time, right? What's the
Hmm.
right level of autonomy is challenging.
Mm. Yeah, I'm also excited towards like autonomous AI as well as physical AI. I mean, this is still a large and growing space. Excited to see where it's headed to and how much it can further transform like anyone's day to day.
Interesting. I think I'm personally very interested in research, especially like in our club, we have a lot of discussions on like world modeling, and then how do we truly understand physics, like like building like vision models or like reconstruction, like image reconstruction.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think that's personally where I'm interested in. Like, Shreyas.
Personally, again, coming from a robotics background, I have to say physical AI. Right now, what VLAs are achieving is incredible. Of course, physical AI brings with it the problem of hardware, but just the models itself, the research is fascinating, and I hope that we see something real very soon. And one thing that most roboticists are really looking forward to, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, is that robotics is bound to have a ChatGPT moment. So ChatGPT moment in the sense that November 2022 was ChatGPT moment for AI. So they're looking forward to a similar moment for robotics sometime in the next 5 years, that it just takes off and booms and becomes the next buzzword.
Mm.
Okay, so let's move on to our next segment. So I think now let's shift our focus on like individuals to like the industry and like as a sector as a whole. So I think my first question would be, which sectors right now are trying the hardest to adopt AI, and where do they struggle the most?
I think overall, every company have a mandate to actually adopt AI, with the fear of, could be fear of missing out, fear of getting disqualified or relevant. But the industry that is really adopting it really fast are the tech natives, especially companies who are not so affected by regulatory and compliance controls, because a lot of these AI models, as we know in Southeast Asia, we have a shortage of data centers, GPUs. So many of these times we would have to send data outside the region, and with a really tight regulations, it's hard for certain industry actually adopt. I think financial services is one of the key. So there, tech native companies are without these constraints, they are able to actually leverage what's available across the world, access to the latest and most powerful models, and build on it. But aside from the access to these resources, it's also about their mindset, their agility, their culture of innovation and taking the risk that actually put them forward to try out all the new technologies, be the first adopters of what is emerging and actually successfully productionize it.
So coming back, like Fabian, you spoke about your lawyer, like AI project, your hackathon project. So do you see that coming true, or is it already being implemented? So how do you feel about that?
Whether there is an existing app at the moment, I
Or
don't
how
know.
close it is? Yeah.
Yeah, that time I remember there was a specific ministry that reached out to us for further development, but forgot what happened in the end. Most of them couldn't. Yeah, but it was but that just showed it was a real need, because after the hackathon, they personally reached out to us and everything. Yeah, so in that sense, I'm not sure. I have not checked back on whether it's now being implemented, but there's definitely, I mean, many different problem spaces that yeah, students can solve even at the student level. Join hackathons to know, like, I think problem state. Normally, they'll give you a concrete problem statement, right? And then from there, you can see what are some of the. That it gives you first exposure of what are the needs in industries, and that's why they're making it as a problem statement, right? And from there, if let's say you build something that you really think is a good one for the future, and let's say you win victory, and yeah, you can make it into a startup, right?
Yep.
What's stopping you? That's the best time for you to try out things at this point in time when you do not have commitments and all that yet.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
we also are very lucky to have a lot of, I think, support to build our projects and even like get funding from a university level up to a national level, and then I think it's a very
Yeah.
we are very lucky to have that as well building. Yeah.
The other thing is like with IT also, yeah, final year projects. I would say take a challenging one, not for the sake of challenge, but something that you're genuinely interested in. Yeah. So for example, last time myself, it was some privacy preserving privacy preserving kind of graph machine learning. Yeah, for anti-money laundering. That was a problem statement that I crafted after much research. I was initially I applied for like privacy preserving ML for because I thought it was interesting, yeah. But that turned out to be a big problem space that yeah, was challenging, was very fulfilling, and you get into the very details of how an ML model works, how do you optimize ML models and all that. Yeah.
That's
So, Jun Kai and Fabrianne, I want to zoom out a bit at this stage of our conversation and look at this technology at a regional level. So right now, as I'm sure if you follow the news, you know that China and the US are the powerhouses when it comes to AI. And when it comes to ASEAN or even zooming in Singapore in particular, I we see some rather interesting news. I mean, on one side, there's the positives, of course, that companies like OpenAI, Mistral, Manus, they're coming to Singapore, setting up their offices. Some of them even get acquired, get VC funding, things like that. On the flip side, one rather interesting news bit that I read a few months ago was about how certain GPU companies, latest GPUs, were trafficked via Singapore into China. So, what do you think is this region's capability when it comes to AI? And how do we compare to the rest of the powerhouses in the world?
I think, in my opinion, right? So if we look at the research space, if we see 2025 NeuroHeaps, I think it's one of the largest research conference. Singapore ranked within the top 5 or top 10 contributors, right? And then, as in terms of university, I think NUS, NTU both stood at 3 and 2% respectively.
Yeah,
I think totally around 7% of papers came from NTU and NUS.
7%.
Yes,
So,
for
like,
NURIPS.
okay.
Yes.
yeah.
Congratulations. That's good. So, in terms of research space, pretty much Singapore is a vibrant and filled with many talents. Many of these companies like Microsoft, uh, and Google as well. I do see openings such as research. They are setting their research lab here in Singapore. Manus AI recently moved to Singapore as well, right? As we can see, and then their move not only brought their existing engineers from where they originated from, but I think they opened at least 20 to 30 open roles. The last I saw when they first moved, and they're hiring roles that are engineering. So many of these talents, people are actually getting them in Singapore. If not, they're actually relocating talents. I think in Singapore there are special packages for AI talents to be relocated into Singapore as well. So Singapore as a whole probably much as an AI talent hub. Southeast Asia, if you zoom out to other Southeast Asia countries, I think they're doing extremely well in the sense that right now the resources are pretty due to globalization. The resources are accessible to everyone. I think the software engineers with the new generation, they're extremely flexible and agile to actually try all the new technologies. So with all the developers that I speak with across the region, they're pretty much on top of all the new technology, and aside from their main work, they actually do it for their personal projects as well. So that's the trend we are seeing.
And speaking to both of you as people working in this domain as developers, are you content with how this region is transforming in terms of this space?
I would say ASEAN is catching up with the rest of the world. Yeah. In terms of the like capabilities, talent is here, but I think the startup space is also fast evolving. Yeah, so that's something that we'll see going, yeah, in the future.
Yeah, I think my personal opinion of this would be if you are looking about existing enterprises, large big bank telcos or what, these moves are actually most of the time driven by the senior management. Fortunately, they have the funding now. There's a drive to get it executed. What's really important to drive further would be actually the mindset of the region here. Collectively, I think at least for the people that I've spoken to, like I mentioned, they're really flexible and agile, and they are very open to learn new technologies among the younger generation. So I don't see in terms of engineering context, we would be slower, but in terms of academia, I mean the research or modeling space, we might be a little bit slower. So in the region, we could see like Sea Lion models developed with AI Singapore, Typhoon model in Thailand. Aside from that, I've not heard of that many model creators compared to US and the China.
Do you think that this region brings a problem unique to itself when it comes to companies adopting AI?
So one of the unique challenge would be language because globally it's kind of underrepresented, especially each of these Southeast Asia countries alone, these languages alone, each might have over 100 dialects for the Thai, Philippines language catalog, Tagalog. So with the typically the training data available isn't that much as well, especially online, that whatever you can write script for. So one of the key challenges would be language.
Just speaking about language, again, I read this morning rather interesting about how people are now prompting LLMs more and more in Chinese
Yep.
because they use, I think, like
Less number of
40,
tokens.
yeah,
Yeah.
they use like 40% less tokens for the same task. And sometimes, even when I use locally hosted LLMs, they give me an output in Chinese. So, how do you see language interacting with LLMs? Like, do you see it centric on English, or do you think that it's going to become more and more localized?
Right now, English is still dominant simply because it excels better compared to other Southeast Asian languages. It's honestly not that great if we were to use any of these existing foundational model. Chinese it does extremely well, probably because as a language as a whole, the representation of it on the public available data is we have a good amount.
Okay, so moving forward, so we spoke about sea lion and regional models that are being developed. So, do you think there's a significant big tech presence in Singapore from, like, let's say, even China or like US or Europe, like companies focusing here? So, do you think there's a strategic push towards building local context or like specific local solutions, or is it more towards um, already selling solutions that already exist to in the regional context? So are they planning to build things locally for local problems? Or are they trying to modify existing solutions to solve local problems?
Mm, I guess this is a easier,
Mm.
yeah, easier said than done. So there are multiple ways to think about it, right? In terms of the use cases, um, there are different types of enterprises, and different type of enterprises, some they adopt more, let's say, and there are different types of builders. Some are more builder focused, some are more like, let's say, they are adapting different kinds of solutions. So you need to see what kind of solutions they are selling, or what kind of solutions they are adopting based on, let's say, the developer's profile, what the developer's needs are. There's no one size fit all solution. Some they would engage, let's say, um partner solutions as part of their overall solution. So that's one way, like SaaS solutions as integrated. So that's one aspect. Some is building from the ground up, the more tech savvy and digital native kind of enterprises. Yeah, so it really ranges. And then startups, they would usually want to build it from the ground up also. Yeah. So looking at the customer segment, the size of the enterprise, and how their developer profile, I think all that will shape the type of solutions they're building. Yeah.
Okay.
Just following up on startups, because both of you mentioned that you worked with them before. Coming from your point of view, because both of you have been in industry for some time now, would you advise a fresh student to enter a startup space right now, become a founder, because of how volatile this entire domain is? Or do you think that this is more the time for students to choose a more stable route because of how the job market is evolving?
Um, if I were to give my opinion on it, I would think because the ease of doing a startup these days, if you're a tech startup, it should be easier, right? The barrier to entry should be easier. So, and if you want to make yourself stand out from the rest, then you probably should. And that's the same reason why students are getting internship, right? So, yeah, as a additional curricular activity, I think entrepreneurship is, in my opinion, I will encourage if I have children living in this generation right now, I will encourage them to do so as part of your resume building. And I think it can be done hand in hand with whichever, whether you are schooling, whether you're employed or not, provided that employees are aware of it and approve of it. So yes, I would actually encourage everyone with some ideas. It could be a company, it could be a startup, it could be a hobby, list it on App Store, and yeah, just go ahead and try something.
Yeah, I agree. I feel now as a student is the best time for you to try out new things, whether it be a startup, get basically finding an idea, a problem statement that you're very passionate about and building it out. Because now with AI tools, the entire process can be built, right? And still, while you're within the like safety net of a school, that's where you can easily get connections, where you can easily get resources, funding, etc. Tap onto what let's say NTU have, right, to be able to try out this entrepreneurship kind of a thing, and then that can change your trajectory for forever. Yeah, I would wish I had ventured more into entrepreneurship when I was a student.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think one point to add on this at the start, one key differentiator is that if you were to join a large enterprise, you're pretty much fixed on a certain job scope and responsibilities, and then you rely on team members to execute different part of the business, right? But as a startup, if you have a product, you have to think about the product features, getting the market feedback, designing the vision and roadmap for your product, all the way to marketing your product, doing go to market. How do I run programs? How do I get, if you're B2B, how do I speak to companies? How do I speak to executive to get buy-in? If I'm a B2C, how do I scale it out and make sure consumers are adapting it? So all these are probably problems that you have to solve as the founder. But if you're working as an enterprise, unfortunately, most of the time you don't get to do all of this scope at one go. So that's a key thing that's different between a startup and working at an enterprise.
So I think we would want to work more like build stuff, create a startup. But before doing all of that, if for students with like a builder mindset or who wants to build like meaningful things with AI, what is the one main piece of advice that you would want to give?
Building for fun or building for, like, let's say a startup or something.
Uh,
I think it could be anything
yeah.
meaningful, like maybe it could be like a passion project, or even like someone starting off to build the next Apple. Uh, what if you were to give just one piece of advice to our audience? What would that be coming from a professional?
Well, I think if you're trying to build a solution, if it's your hobby, then go ahead and do it. But if you're thinking about building something meaningful, I think it's more important to really understand whether someone really need this. Preferably, you should be a user of this product as well. This should be a problem that you have went through before, so you really understand the problem that you're actually trying to solve. So I would think it's more of a product market fit would be the first step that you have to start on. And then when go on to building it, I think it's pretty standard these days, vibe coding or whatnot. So, but product market fit and really being able to empathize with the market is very important.
Yeah, so totally agree. For example, I had one hackathon. It was in the finals. It was a live Q&A, and then one of the judges was like, "This seems like a perceived need, not a real need." Yeah, and of course it's not. In that time, for that particular hackathon, of course it hurt a lot. But it's that is the essence, right? We are building a meaningful product. Ultimately, how do you know that a product is a real need? Yeah, I gained a lot from that particular experience. So how do you know that that is indeed a real need that is wanted by consumers? And that's why market research is very important. Surveying the ground is very important. Getting people to test your product if that's something that you want to get. Like, I mean, now I'm sharing in terms of more of if you want to build a product for real, that whether it's on the app store, whether it's a startup or whatever, getting users to give iterative and quick feedback. I think that's extremely important to be able to ultimately build a successful and meaningful product that others would use.
Okay. Um, I think that's great advice, and I think
Yeah, thank you so much. I think with that, we are coming to the end of our conversation for today. Thank you so much, both of you, for being over here. If I could just summarize, I think what really makes this moment in AI interesting to us is not just how powerful the technology is becoming, but also the fact that it's changing the way we live, the way we work, and the way we think. And for any students entering this domain today, this creates a very different kind of opportunity as we discussed so far. So not just to use the tools that AI brings along with it, but also to shape how they're being applied in the real world. So thank you both for coming down here and having such a thoughtful and grounded conversation with us. And to everyone listening, we'll be happy to see you in the next episode. And before ending, I'd like to give a shout out to our co-host, Aviram. Thank you so much.
thank you so
Thank you.
much.